Welcome back to the Flying with the Flock podcast, the best place to get all of your Eagles and other NFL related news. I'm your host, Matt, and happy holidays, Merry Christmas, y'all. Welcome to your Christmas Eve special edition of this week's podcast. Before I jump into it, if y'all could leave a like and subscribe down below, that would be much appreciated on this holiday week. And, without further ado, let's jump right into it. So this week, what I'm going to do to keep it a little bit on the shorter side, since I don't have a whole lot of time, and I know you guys don't have a whole lot of time with it being Christmas and all, we're going to cover the Eagles game, and then we're going to cover a couple other games that I find very important for whether a team got eliminated from the playoffs, or whether the game eliminated a completely different team from the playoffs, or whether it changed the playoff picture moving forward. So let's jump right into the Eagles-Commanders game here. Your Philadelphia Eagles stretched this win streak to a 2-game win streak after their, I feel like it was more dominating than what the score shows, win over the Commanders 29-18. Jalen Hurts, he went 22 of 30, 185 yards, 2 touchdowns on the day. Saquon had his best game of the season so far. He had 21 carries for 132 yards and 1 touchdown on the day. Jalen Hurts had 7 carries for 40 yards, and Tank Bigsby had 4 carries for 37 yards and a touchdown on the ground. Receiving-wise, A.J. Brown led the charge. He had 9 receptions for 95 yards. Devontae Smith had 6 receptions for 42 yards and a touchdown. Dallas Goedert had 3 receptions for 32 yards and a touchdown. Defense-wise, they were able to intercept the quarterback, that being Cooper DeJean, getting the interception this week on defense, and they were able to sack the 2 quarterbacks that the Commanders had playing twice, 1 time each. So they were able to apply a little bit of pressure. They were just not entirely getting home on the quarterback. It should be where is he? Brandon Graham had another sack, that being 3 sacks in the past 2 games, and he's only taken 9 snaps in these past 2 games. So that means a third of the time he's sacking the quarterback. So let's just put that out there, that Brandon Graham really hasn't lost a step. And Cooper DeJean got his 3rd career interception, 2nd this season, against the Commanders here. Speaking of the Commanders, they had Marcus Mariota take snaps as quarterback. He went 7 of 14, 95 yards through the air. And then they also had Josh Johnson take snaps later in the second half after Mariota went down with a finger injury, I want to say, on his throwing hand. Johnson went 5 for 9, 43 yards, and 1 interception. Rushing-wise, Chris Rodriguez led the charge. He had 15 carries for 63 yards and 1 touchdown. And Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt had 8 carries for 25 yards and 1 touchdown. Receiving-wise, their lead receiver was Terry McLaurin. He had 3 receptions for 53 yards. Deebo Samuel had 3 receptions for 35 yards. And Treylon Burks had 2 receptions for 30 yards. Defense-wise, they were able to sack the quarterback twice, getting after Jalen Hurts, but they weren't able to force any turnovers by this Eagles offense at all. The damage was mainly done on the Eagles' special teams, which continues to struggle every couple of games, where they just seem to really struggle to hold on to the ball. And, we'll jump into this point that I have in a couple of minutes here. What we can kind of learn from this win is that, yes, the Eagles are starting to find their rhythm now, both on offense and defense, and they're not fully healthy yet either. They don't have a Jalen Carter, who could be back this weekend to play against the Bills. They don't have a Lane Johnson, who could be back this weekend to play against the Bills. And so, to me, yes, the Raiders win and the Commanders win are all nice. The Commanders win helped us clinch the division, which we'll get into in a couple minutes here. But these are just tune-up games for the big finale game, to me, at least for our starters, which is the Buffalo Bills game this Sunday. The Bills game is going to be the true measuring stick game that we have late in our schedule to see where we really are at. Right now, I still feel like the Bills are one of the better teams in the AFC moving forward. And so if the Eagles come out and they play a solid four-quarter game where the offense looks good, maybe not great, but has its own self-identity and has its own rhythm to it, and the defense comes out, looks like the defense of last year, and can generate turnovers and can stop this explosive Bills offense on third down, we might be in business. This Bills game reminds me kind of the Ravens game last season, where both the offense and defense showed up. Yes, it was a 24-19 win over the Ravens, but it really didn't feel that close because of how our team, and especially that defense, showed up against a top-tier NFL offense and top-tier NFL quarterback, top 3 NFL quarterback, last season and this season, possibly in this game. So it's going to be interesting to see whether this unit as a whole can play together. Now, I'm starting to believe that the offense and the defense can. My faith is starting to waver in the special teams. We had a fumble on the opening kickoff this past week against the Commanders, and if you get into the playoffs, you are going to lose. Big time, if that happens. We cannot see any more flubs on kickoff returns or punt returns. Our guys have to hold on to the ball. But that's not where I'm ultimately concerned. Where I'm majorly concerned is that Jake Elliott is looking worse than he ever has in his career. And so it brings me to the point where I'm debating whether this is his last year. It wouldn't surprise me if the Eagles made a move to where they cut Elliott in the offseason and save them a couple $1 million in cap space. Yes, he's brought this city 2 championships. He's one of the most winningest Philadelphia sports athletes. But he over the last 2 seasons, he's looked fairly inconsistent. And yes, last year there was a rumor that he was possibly injured throughout the season, and yes, I do kind of buy into that, looking at some of the details, but this season there is no excuse. If he's missing 3 or 4 field goals, which could have put us up by 13 points over the Commanders, and we could have had an even bigger blowout against our division rival, then we really have to sit down and start having that conversation of, okay, what's really going on, and is it time to move on? Obviously, I love Jake Elliott, but I think, personally, it might be time to move on from Jake Elliott after this season. But, yeah, anything else about this game? I already said offense is starting to find its identity, starting to find its rhythm again. Defense is looking stout, and they don't even have arguably their best player playing. So the Eagles, with this win, won the NFC East for the twice in a row. So we are the first NFC East back-to-back champions since before I was born. Alright, from 2001 to 2004, the Eagles dominated and they won the division. It has been nearly 20 to 21 years. No, it has been 21 years since the Eagles have been able to pull off this feat, or any team, frankly. No team has in the NFC East has been able to break the curse and win back-to-back seasons. But the Eagles were the team to do it. They were the first team to set the curse, and they were the team to break it. So ultimately that eliminates Dallas from the playoffs, meaning that there is only one NFC East team going into the playoffs, and that will be your Philadelphia Eagles. So I will not touch on Dallas much this week, only because they're eliminated. And moving forward, they don't really play a big deal because they're not like in a battle for a top draft spot, but they're also not playing for a playoff spot anymore. So Dallas, so long, but nobody gives a rat's ass. All right. So the next game I wanted to talk about was the Thursday night matchup. This one was really important. The Seattle Seahawks upset the Los Angeles Rams 38-37. Sam Darnold on this game, he went 22 of 34, 270 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Rushing wise, their lead rusher was Kenneth Walker with 11 carries for 100 yards and a touchdown, and Zach Charbonnet had 9 carries for 32 yards and a touchdown. Receiving, Jackson Smith-Njigba had 8 receptions for 96 yards and a touchdown. Kenneth Walker had 3 receptions for 64 yards, and A.J. Barner had 4 receptions for 49 yards and a touchdown. Defensive-wise, they were able to sack Matthew Stafford 0 times, ultimately not being able to throw him off his rhythm, especially early on. Obviously, this was a comeback win for the Seattle team here in overtime, which we'll get into how they got there and the specific play that I know that you're all waiting for me to comment on in a minute here. But moving over to the Rams, Matthew Stafford went 29 of 49, 457 yards, and 3 touchdowns through the air. Kyren Williams led the charge on the ground. He had 23 carries for 70 yards. But Blake Corum had 14 carries for 48 yards and a touchdown. Receiving, Puka Nacua had, holy Jesus, he had 12 receptions for 225 yards and 2 touchdowns through the air. Xavier Smith was the next closest receiver. He had 2 receptions for 57 yards. And Kantana Munfield had 3 receptions for 40 yards as well. Defense, they were able to sack the quarterback 4 times and intercept Sam Darnold twice. Both were very ugly interceptions by Darnold. And so, yeah, the Rams still lost. So this brings me to kind of the overall deal, why I'm kind of talking about this game. First, let's get into the play that I know that you're all waiting for me to comment on, and that's the backwards pass for the 2-point conversion. Yes, that is a legal play. It was a backwards pass. So if it is tipped, or if it is hit, or if it hits the ground, it is classified as a fumble because it is a backwards pass or a lateral. So the fact that it was going backwards and then bounced forwards because it hit the defender's hand or helmet doesn't mean squat. It's a fumble. So when Zach Charbonnet picks it up in the end zone, that means that the 2-point conversion is good. So I don't want to see crybabies online trying to say, oh, well, if it wasn't for this, if it wasn't for that, if the Rams played some defense, for God's sake, maybe they would have won. I mean, hell, the Rams were up 23-14. Oh, sorry, no, they were up 13-7 at half. 23-14 going into the fourth quarter, and then they allowed Seattle to score 16 points in the fourth quarter and 8 points in overtime. This is arguably game of the year for the NFL, but I still want to say that the Rams, now with this loss, look 10 times more shaky and are now a wild card team. Seattle now is the one in the driver's seat for the NFC. So, in the driver's seat for the NFC West and the NFC as a whole. And now, let's see. And now, where are they? The 49ers are ahead of the Rams because the Rams have lost more recently. Now, the Seahawks, 49ers, and Rams have all clinched playoff spots. The only team in the NFL that has clinched their division is the Eagles. I just like to throw that in there because that's cool. But these three teams are going to have to duke it out for this division, and if the Seahawks can win out on their schedule, which is possible, they play the Panthers, who are looking to try to win and stay afloat, and then the 49ers to end the season off with. That could be for the division, depending on how things shake out. So we're going to have to wait and see, but Rams, y'all's fate is not in your guys' hands anymore. You guys are going to have to wait and see how your division rivals shake out over the last 2 weeks of the NFL regular season. Alright, another fairly important game for the NFC playoff picture was the Chicago Bears upsetting the Green Bay Packers 22-16. Caleb Williams for the Bears, he went 19-34, 250 yards, and 2 touchdowns on the day. We'll get into the 1 touchdown in a little bit here. Rushing-wise, DeAndre Swift kind of had a mediocre game. He had 13 carries for 58 yards. And Kyle Monangai had 9 carries for 50 yards. And Caleb Williams had 3 carries for 30 yards. There you go. Receiving, DJ Moore led the charge. He had 5 receptions for 97 yards and 1 touchdown. Kyle Monangai had 3 receptions for 43 yards. And Olamide Zaccheaus had 2 receptions for 33 yards. Defensive-wise, they were able to sack both quarterbacks a total of 2 times, and they were not able to force any turnovers. But they were able to get an onside kick, which we'll talk about in a little bit here. Speaking of the Packers, their quarterback, Jordan Love, he went 18-13 for 77 yards, and then he went down with a concussion. And when he got hit, I automatically knew it was a concussion just by the way that his head hit the turf and his face reacted. So he's still in concussion protocol, so God only knows whether he's going to be ready for their opponent this week, which, as I'm stalling, is the Ravens. So we're going to have to wait and see about that. We still don't know. But they eventually had Malik Willis come in, who is a decent backup. He went 9 for 11, 121 yards, 1 touchdown all the day. Rushing-wise, their leading rusher was Emmanuel Wilson with 14 carries for 82 yards. Malik Willis had 10 carries for 44 yards, and Josh Jacobs had 12 carries for 36 yards. Receiving, Romeo Doubs led the charge. He had 5 receptions for 84 yards and 1 touchdown. Luke Musgrave had 3 receptions for 38 yards. Jaden Reed had 3 receptions for 35 yards. Romeo Doubs, we'll get into that in a second here. He was also on special teams when they lost the football. We'll get to that in a sec here. Defense-wise, they were not able to sack Caleb Williams once, nor were they able to force any turnovers as well. They were just able to keep the offense behind the sticks for the most part, stifling this Chicago offense. But where did everything go wrong? Well, so the Packers were up 6-0 at halftime. They were then up 13-0. And then the Chicago started to wake up. They scored 3 points in the third quarter, making it 13-3. And then they scored 13 points in the fourth quarter, and the Packers scored 3, making it 16-16 going into overtime, or the fourth overtime. The Bears got the ball back from the Packers on an onside kick, which Romeo Doubs fumbled through his hands, and then obviously the Bears recovered. They went down, they scored a touchdown as time expired, forcing overtime, and they eventually forced another fumble. I forget who it was by. I want to say it was Josh Jacobs. As he was running the ball up the middle, they forced a fumble, took the ball, and then allowed Caleb Williams to ball out, and he just chucked one deep for DJ Moore, and he came down with it, and they ultimately walked off the game with a game-winning touchdown in overtime. And so the reason that this really shakes up the NFC playoff picture is now Chicago is sitting at the 2nd seed at 11-4, while the Packers, let me find the NFL play. Give me one moment here. Alright, currently the Packers are sitting as the 7th seed in the NFC, whereas Chicago is now sitting as the 2nd seed in the NFC. So these two teams have played twice. They split with the Bears winning most recently, meaning that the Packers are going to need some help moving forward. They're going to need teams like the 49ers and the Lions to beat the Bears, and the Packers to beat teams like the Ravens and the Vikings, for the Packers to have a chance to get into a higher seed in the NFC playoff picture. Obviously, it would be better for the Eagles if the Green Bay Packers got into the playoff picture higher up in a seed and then tied or got less of a record than the Eagles did, meaning that the Eagles would have a chance at the 2nd seed. But that's just, best case scenario. Alright, the next game I wanted to touch on was Buccaneers-Panthers. This is also important for the NFC playoff picture. So let's jump right into it. The Carolina Panthers beat the Buccaneers 23-20. Bryce Young, he went 21 of 32, 191 yards and 2 touchdowns through the air. Rushing-wise, their leading rusher was Rico Dowell with 9 carries for 29 yards, and Chuba Hubbard had 6 carries for 27 yards. Receiving-wise, Territory McMillan led the charge with 6 receptions for 73 yards and 1 touchdown. And Jalen Coker had 3 receptions for 47 yards, and Mitchell Evans had 3 receptions for 23 yards. Defense, they were able to sack Baker Mayfield twice and force an interception by Baker as well, ultimately doing just enough to put the Panthers just ahead of this Buccaneers team and Buccaneers offense. Speaking of that Buccaneers offense, Baker Mayfield, he went 18 of 26, 145 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception on the day. Their leading rusher was Bucky Irving, who had 19 carries for 71 yards. Baker Mayfield, who had 4 carries for 49 yards, and Rachaad White, who had 5 carries, for 45 yards. Receiving, Emeka Mbuka, again, continues to be at the top of this team's receiving list. He had 1 reception for 40 yards. So wasn't peppered with as many targets or receptions this game. Mike Evans had 5 receptions for 31 yards and a touchdown, and Chris Godwin had 5 receptions for 30 yards. Defense-wise, they were able to sack Bryce Young twice, but weren't able to force any turnovers by the quarterback, ultimately allowing Bryce Young to have somewhat of a clean game, and a clean game he did have. So why did I decide to include these two lowly teams that are battling it out for the 4th seed in the NFC? And that's because I feel like if the Panthers get in, and eventually they have to face off with the Eagles in some miraculous, something or other, they would have a better chance at beating the Panthers in the playoffs than they would the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers are starting to wane, and this is their Panthers-Buccaneers first matchup of the season. The Panthers have to play the Seahawks, and then they play the Buccaneers once again, so we're going to see how this NFC South shakes up. They have a very high chance of that final game meaning the most, especially with the Buccaneers playing an easier team like the Dolphins this coming week. So the two teams being tied going into that last week playing each other. So it's more of a wait and see how these two teams kind of unfold over the next week or so, and that will kind of decide how big is their final game of the season. Do the Panthers need to start their starters, or can they let them rest going into the playoffs? Who knows? But yeah, big for the NFL playoff picture, and moving forward could be big for the Eagles' chances of making the playoffs. Or not making the playoffs, making it deep in the playoffs. Another big game that I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, it is not an NFC matchup, it's an AFC matchup of massive proportions. The Jacksonville Jaguars beat the Denver Broncos 34-20. Trevor Lawrence, who has been surging very late this season, I forget if his odds have gone up. MVP odds. Let's see, I want to say his odds are higher now. Yeah, Trevor Lawrence has rose to plus 7,500 odds, and he's fourth in MVP odds right now. Only behind Josh Allen, Drake May, and Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford had a down game, so I feel like he could drop. Drake May could rise, and you have to see how Josh Allen plays against the Eagles this weekend. But we could talk about Trevor Lawrence could be top 3, if not top 2 in the NFL. In the NFL MVP voting. But let's get back to the game itself. Trevor Lawrence beat up on the Broncos. He went 23 of 36, 279 yards, and 3 touchdowns through the air. Rushing-wise, Travis Etienne had 16 carries for 50 yards. Trevor Lawrence also had 6 carries for 20 yards and a touchdown. Receiving-wise, Parker Washington was their lead receiver this game. He had 6 receptions for 145 yards and 1 touchdown. Jacoby Myers had 4 receptions for 45 yards. Brendan Strange had 5 receptions for 39 yards. And that's really anybody I'm going to note here because everybody else is pretty low in the numbers category there. And defensive-wise, this Broncos team was able to only sack Bo Nix once, but they were also able to force an interception by Bo Nix, which would help them put the Jaguars ahead since the Jacksonville offense was able to capitalize off of that turnover. Moving over, we have Bo Nix. He went 28 of 47, 352 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception through the air. Rushing-wise, R.J. Harvey had a quieter game. He had 7 carries for 50 yards and a touchdown. And Jaleel McLaughlin had 5 carries for 37 yards. Receiving-wise, Courtland Sutton had 6 receptions for 86 yards and a touchdown. R.J. Harvey had 4 receptions for 71 yards. Troy Franklin had 4 receptions for 66 yards. There's a long list. Bo Nix really slung this rock around here. I'm not going to go down this entire list, but those were your top 3 receivers for the Broncos. And defense-wise, they were able to sack Trevor Lawrence 5 times, but it wasn't enough duress to really force any turnovers by this Jacksonville offense, who continued to just go down and score. I mean, they scored 7 in the first, 10 in the second, 14 in the third, and 3 in the fourth. Ultimately, just continuing to put points on the board and keep themselves ahead of the Broncos. I mean, they were up 17-10 at halftime, and then they exploded coming out of half. And the Jaguars... Okay, so let's get into why I included this game. Obviously, you can guess playoff picture, but the Jaguars really exploded after the past couple of weeks, and now they are threatening to get a top 2 seed in the AFC, which I would have never thought that I would ever be saying in my entire life, but here we are. So, yes, we know Denver's still number 1. New England's number 2. I feel like they should be number 1, but it might be I'm thinking of it wrong, how the system works. Jacksonville's at number 3 at 11-4. The other 2 teams that I just mentioned are 12-3. So they're not far off. They need some outside help, but the Jaguars could have a shot at the number 2 seed or the number 1 seed and a first round bye. We'll have to wait and see how T-Law and the Jags are going to respond moving forward. They have 2 easier games. They have the Colts and they have the Titans, so they could win out and go 13-4 on the season. Unless they just rest their starters the last game, especially if they lock up the division. And the Broncos, to me, if they play a top-tier team, they're going to get exposed. They play the Chiefs tomorrow on Christmas. Nothing big is going to happen there. But playing the Chargers on Sunday the 4th could be a massive game for the AFC playoff picture. We're just going to have to wait and see. Okay. I think I picked one more game for us to cover. Oh, yeah. So I picked Steelers-Lions. Now, this game was insane. All right? We saw prime Aaron Rodgers come back to an AFC North foe and just dominate them. The Steelers beat the Lions 29-24. Aaron Rodgers went 27-41, 266 yards, and 1 touchdown through the air. On the ground, the Steelers had Jaylen Warren, who had 14 carries for 43 yards and 2 touchdowns, and Kenneth Walker, who had 9 carries for 50 yards. And Kenneth Walker didn't just stop there. He also attributed in the receiving game with an insane touchdown catch. Go and watch it. Go and find the highlights and watch it for yourself. I have never seen anything like it in my life, and I will never see anything like it moving forward. But Kenneth Walker had an insane touchdown catch, which ultimately put him over the top to be the lead and the front man receiver for this week. He had 5 receptions for 78 yards and 1 touchdown. Adam Thielen, out of all people, had 4 receptions for 49 yards. He was second. And DK Metcalf, who's been suspended for the next 2 games, had 4 receptions for 42 yards. Defense-wise, they were able to sack the quarterback 3 times, but they weren't able to force any turnovers, no fumbles, no interceptions. They were just able to stop this offense early and often and try to force 3-and-outs of Jared Goff and this explosive line offense as much as possible. Moving over to this Lions offense, Jared Goff, he went 34 of 54, 34 of 54, 364 yards, 3 touchdowns on the day. Rushing-wise was abysmal for the Lions today. David Montgomery led the charge with 4 carries for 14 yards. Jahmyr Gibbs had 7 carries for 2 yards. Receiving, Jameson Williams had 5 receptions for 70 yards. He led the charge in the receiving room with these wide receivers and running backs. Jahmyr Gibbs had 10 receptions for 66 yards and 1 touchdown. And Khalif Raymond had 4 receptions for 62 yards and 1 touchdown. And we'll add Amon-Ra St. Brown in here because I'm feeling nice. He had 4 receptions for 54 yards. And defensive-wise, they were able to sack Aaron Rodgers twice, but they weren't able to force any interceptions of the veteran quarterback, ultimately not putting the Lions in an advantageous position to put themselves in a closer game or put themselves ahead in a close game. So, let's ask the question, why, Matt? Why did you include this game? Well, besides it essentially eliminating the Lions from the playoffs, It also proved to me that the Steelers could be an overall pretty good team. If everything is clicking and Aaron Rodgers is playing his best football, and let's say come late January, the Steelers match up against a team that's as run heavy as the Lions, this would be a good matchup to look at and see how they shut down excuse me, how they shut down this Lions team and this dangerous and explosive Lions run game. So, just something to note moving forward, how the Steelers could be a real team, and maybe we just have been sleeping on them a little bit. Or at least maybe I have. Alright, so let's blitz through this weekend's picks of games here. On our first Christmas Day game, we have the Cowboys versus the Commanders. Give me the Cowboys. The Commanders are starting Josh Johnson, and God bless his soul, he's going to get eaten alive on national television on Christmas. Sorry, bud. That's your Christmas gift from the NFL. Give me Cowboys 42-17. Next up, we have Lions, Vikings. Give me the Lions beating up on the lowly Vikings. I think there is a chance where the Lions could get into the playoffs if, like, the Packers lose out or some BS. But give me the Lions. I think they're going to beat up on the Minnesota Vikings, especially with Max Brosmer in at quarterback, the rookie. So, give me Detroit 38-24. Broncos, Chiefs. God bless whoever the Chiefs quarterback is. Chiefs third. Who is it? Oh my God, I don't know how to pronounce that name. Chris Olaluakon. Chris Olaluakon is their third string quarterback going up against one of, if not the best defense in the NFL. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes went down with an injury, and Gardner Minshew went down with an ACL injury as well. So, yeah, the Broncos are going to eat the Chiefs alive on national television. If I'm the Broncos, I don't even start my starters on Christmas, but give me the Broncos 35 to the Chiefs 10 points. Texans, Chargers. Give me the Texans. I feel like that defense is going to find a way to shut down Justin Herbert and that run game as well. So give me the Texans here. They're technically the underdogs, and I like them in this matchup here. In a close matchup, 27-24. Ravens, Packers. Give me the Packers. I don't think they're going to lose, even with Malik Willis at quarterback, who I kind of like at quarterback for the Packers. Give me the Packers over the Ravens, who are banged up and possibly without Lamar Jackson this week. Uh, 34-20. Next up, we have Arizona versus Cincinnati. Give me Cincinnati. Although they have nothing to play for, Joe Burrow likes to sling the ball for no reason so much that he could probably carve up any defense. So give me the Bengals beating up on the lowly Cardinals. 31-17. Next up, Seahawks, Panthers. Give me the Seahawks. I think they're going to ride this momentum into the playoffs and ultimately win out. I think they'll find a way to win and get that first seed, and I just don't think the Panthers are up to snuff to battle up against this Seahawks defense. So give me Seattle in a tight matchup, 26 to 21. 26 to 21. Steelers, Browns. Give me the Steelers. I think Myles Garrett breaks a sack record here against Aaron Rodgers. So give me the Steelers beating the Browns. What's a fair score? I don't want to keep going in the 30s, but I feel like some of these are kind of blowouts here. 41 to 14. Saints, Titans. Give me the Saints. I think Tyler Shuck is going to find a way to win. And although the Titans just got a good win over the Chiefs, I still have a little bit more confidence in the Saints and their coaching staff far compared to what the Titans have as coaches over there in their facilities. So give me the Saints 21 to 17 over the Titans. Jaguars, Colts, give me the Jags. I just think this Jags defense is going to get after Phillip Rivers and just pressure him nonstop, ultimately making his life a living nightmare. And Trevor Lawrence is going to blow out. So give me the Jaguars 34 to the Colts 24. Buccaneers, Dolphins, give me the Bucks. I think they are going to be hungry to win. I think they're going to be trying to stay afloat. And so they're going to beat this lowly Dolphins team and push themselves to 8-8 on the season. So give me the Bucks in a closer matchup than people think, 20 to 17. Patriots, Jets, give me the Patriots by a mile. They have a lot more momentum than the Jets have. So give me the Patriots. 27 to 13. Giants, Raiders. Give me the... Oh, boy. This is a battle of the worst of the worst. Here, this is a battle for the number 1 overall pick. So, give me the Giants. I think Jackson Dart is going to find a way, and I think he's going to find a way to win to avoid the Giants questioning whether they should draft a quarterback with the number 1 overall pick. So, give me New York over Las Vegas here in the matchup of the first overall pick in the upcoming NFL draft. Next up, we have Eagles, Bills. Give me Eagles. I just think that they're finding a rhythm now. They're going to find a way to click. And when everything comes together and they upset a team like the Bills, it's going to surprise a lot of people. So give me the Eagles over the Bills in a very tight matchup. $27 to 24. Chicago versus San Francisco. Give me Chicago. I think the Bears are just going to find a way to beat up on this banged up 49ers defense, which has kind of been limping around off the back of their offense. So give me the Bears over the Niners. And it's not going to be that close. It's going to be like 37 to 24 Chicago. And that's Sunday Night Football too. Then we have Monday Night Football, where we have the Rams versus the Falcons, and I don't see any world where the Rams lose to the Falcons. So give me the Rams in close to a blowout. Give me the Rams 37 to 9 over the Falcons. Alright, that's it for this Christmas episode of the Flying with the Fly podcast. Thank you guys for listening. Hopefully you guys have a safe holiday season and you have a very Merry Christmas from us here at the Flying with the Flock family. And before I let you go and enjoy some presents with your family, because I know You're skipping them for me. Thank you so much. I just want to let you know, very Merry Christmas, and go Birds.